She jumped in front of a car to save a boy without knowing he was the son of a widowed millionaire. 3 weeks before the accident, Sophia Rivera had celebrated her 28th birthday alone, with a small cupcake bought from the corner bakery and a single candle that she blew out, making the same wish she always made, that someday she would stop feeling invisible. Her one-bedroom apartment in Queens was small but cozy, filled with her students' artwork taped to every available surface. Drawings of happy families, houses with smoking chimneys, dogs playing in green yards. Every night, after grading papers and preparing lessons for the next day, she would sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the families in the building across the street. Mothers tucking their children into bed, fathers coming home late from work, but still greeted with enthusiastic hugs. She was an unwilling voyeur of the life she had always wanted, but never had the courage to seek. Her parents had been her entire world. Mexican immigrants, who had come to America with enormous dreams and empty pockets, they had worked day and night to give her the education they never had. Their premature death in a car accident had left Sophia not only orphaned, but also with a deep distrust of emotional bonds. It was safer to love other people's children, return them to their families at the end of the day, and protect her heart from future losses. But that philosophy was about to be completely destroyed. The October rain hammered New York City like tears from heaven. Sophia Rivera pressed her worn coat against her chest, her footsteps echoing on the slick sidewalks of Fifth Avenue. Exhaustion weighed on her shoulders like a damp blanket after an especially challenging day at St. Patrick's Elementary School. Her worn shoes splashed through puddles as she gazed at the elegant shop windows lining the street. Jewelry stores that cost more than her annual salary, boutiques where a single dress equaled 2 months' rent. It was her route home, but also a daily reminder of worlds she could never touch. Then it happened. A flash of red caught her attention. A soccer ball was rolling uncontrollably toward the busy avenue, chased by a boy no older than 7. Dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain, bright eyes focused solely on retrieving his toy, completely oblivious to the roar of the engine approaching. The black BMW appeared like a deadly shadow, cutting through the curtain of rain at suicidal speed. Behind the wheel, Sophia caught a glimpse of a man in a dark suit, head down, attention divided between documents and the road. Time disintegrated. There was no rational thought, no risk calculation, only the maternal instinct that had defined her life since she lost her parents 8 years ago. Sophia dropped her bag and launched herself onto the wet asphalt. "T-wire no," screamed a voice from somewhere far away, but she was already in motion. Her arms wrapped around the small body of the child, pushing him with all her strength toward the safety of the sidewalk. The impact of the BMW against her ribs sounded like breaking wood. The world spun in a spiral of pain and rain before darkness claimed her. If this story is moving you as much as it's moving me, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. When Sophia woke up, the world was white and silent, except for the constant beeping of medical machines. Her head throbbed with dull pain. Each breath sent stabs through her bandaged ribs, but she was alive. "She's awake," murmured a masculine voice, deep and loaded with guilt. Sophia slowly turned her head toward the voice. A man was sitting in the chair next to her bed, wrinkled suit, disheveled black hair, coffee-colored eyes that hadn't known sleep in days. In his arms, curled up like a frightened cat, was the boy she had saved. "I'm Alexander Blackwell," the man said, his voice breaking slightly. "This is my son Tyler. I was the one driving the car." Sophia studied the man's face. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that spoke of difficult decisions, but there was something broken in his eyes. It wasn't just guilt about the accident. It was something deeper, older. "How is he?" Sophia asked, her voice hoarse. "He's fine thanks to you," Alexander replied. "But you have 3 fractured ribs and a concussion. The doctors say you'll be here at least a week." Tyler lifted his head from his father's chest, enormous and solemn eyes. "Daddy says you're an angel," he whispered, "that you jumped from heaven to save me." Despite the pain, Sophia smiled. "I'm not an angel, sweetheart. I'm just a teacher who couldn't let you get hurt." "Teacher," Alexander leaned forward, something changing in his expression. What school? St. Patrick's Elementary, Sophia replied. I teach kids Tyler's age. Alexander exchanged a strange look with his son. Tyler has problems at school. He runs away during recess, doesn't pay attention. The teachers say he's troubled. Sophia observed the boy more carefully. She recognized the signs, the way he clung to his father, the tension in his small shoulders, the sadness that floated behind his bright eyes. He was a child who had learned too early that the world could be a dangerous place. Children act out when they need something they can't express in words, she said softly. Over the following days, Alexander visited the hospital religiously. At first he came only to apologize, to ensure she had the best medical care money could buy, but something else began to bloom in those quiet conversations beside her bed. Sophia discovered that Alexander Blackwell was one of the most powerful real estate moguls in America. He had built an empire from scratch, son of a carpenter from small-town Georgia, who had come to New York with nothing more than inherited tools and iron determination. But that empire had cost everything else. His wife, Catherine, had died 3 years ago during the birth of their second son, Ethan. Since then, Alexander had buried his pain in work and numbers, letting others raise his children. Catherine was my school, he confessed one afternoon, while rain pounded the hospital windows. She taught me which fork to use for dessert, what wine to choose, how to behave at social events. Without her, I'm just a small-town guy, lost in expensive suits. Tyler blames me, he continued, his voice breaking. He doesn't say it, but I see it in his eyes. He thinks if I hadn't had to work so much, if I had been home, maybe Catherine would still be alive. And Ethan? Sophia asked gently. Alexander's face hardened. Ethan. I can't look at him without seeing Catherine, without remembering what I lost the day he was born. Sophia felt her heart break for this broken man, and the children who paid the price for his pain. She had known that loss. When her parents died in a car accident, she too had wanted to bury her pain. But she had learned that shared pain becomes bearable, while hoarded pain becomes poisonous. When the day of her discharge arrived, Alexander made an unexpected proposal. I want to hire you, he said, his words tumbling out as if he had been rehearsing them. As Tyler's private tutor, you've lost 2 weeks of work because of me, and he asks about you every day. Sophia felt a mix of conflicting emotions. The offer was generous, probably more money than she had seen in years, but it also felt like charity, and she had fought too hard for her independence to accept handouts. I don't need your pity, Mr. Blackwell, she replied with dignity. It's not pity, he replied, taking a step closer. It's desperation. Tyler has had 7 tutors in 2 years. He runs away from all of them, ignores them, makes them cry. But with you it's different. Please. There was something in the way he pronounced that last word that made all of Sophia's defenses crumble. It wasn't the powerful businessman begging. It was a lost father asking for help. Have you ever made a decision that you knew would change your life forever? Tell me in the comments what you would do in Sophia's place. The Blackwell mansion was a palace of marble and glass in the exclusive Hamptons neighborhood. Perfectly manicured gardens stretched like green carpets as far as the eye could see, but there was something cold about all that perfection. Like a beautiful museum where no one actually lived. Sophia arrived with a single suitcase, feeling the weight of curious stares from the household staff. Maria, the housekeeper, a middle-aged woman with perceptive eyes, evaluated her from head to toe while showing her to her room. So you're the new tutor? She asked, with a slight Puerto Rican accent she couldn't completely hide. There have been many before you, miss. Let's hope you last longer than the others. Miss Sophia. Tyler appeared running through the marble hallway, his footsteps creating echoes in the cavernous space. He launched himself into her arms with an intensity that took her breath away. Hey champ, she murmured, ruffling his hair. Ready for some learning adventures? Are you going to stay here? He asked, his big eyes filled with equal parts hope and fear. For a while, she promised. That's when she saw him. A small boy was watching from the stairs, partially hidden behind the ornate railings. Curly blonde hair, the same deep coffee eyes as his father, but where Tyler radiated nervous energy, this child seemed ethereal, as if he might vanish if someone looked at him directly. "That's Ethan," Tyler murmured, following her gaze. "Daddy says not to bother him. He's sad because he doesn't have a mommy." Sophia's heart broke a little more. She knelt to be at Tyler's height. "And what do you think about your little brother?"
Oh,
Tyler shrugged, but there were tears shining in his eyes.
Ethan is sad.
"I think he feels lonely. Sometimes he cries at night and calls for his mommy, but nobody comes." In the following weeks, Sophia developed routines that slowly began to bring life to the cold mansion. Classes with Tyler became expeditions through the house and gardens. Math counting rose petals, science observing insects in the pond, history exploring the library full of old books that no one had touched in years. But it was Ethan who really captured her attention. The 3-year-old appeared on the edges of their activities like a little shadow, watching but never participating. The nannies Alexander hired cared for him competently, but without affection, as if he were a valuable object that needed maintenance. One afternoon, while Tyler was napping, Sophia found Ethan sitting alone in the garden, building towers with small stones that he then systematically knocked down. "Hi, Ethan," she said softly, sitting at a respectful distance. The boy looked at her with those enormous eyes but didn't run away. Instead, he continued his methodical construction and destruction. "Can I help you build?" she asked. Ethan considered this solemnly, then nodded. They worked in silence for several minutes, building increasingly elaborate towers. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was so soft she had to lean in to hear. "Does Daddy hate me because I killed Mommy?" The question hit Sophia like a punch to the stomach. This baby, this innocent child, had been carrying that impossible guilt throughout his short life. "Oh, my little one," she whispered, slowly moving closer. "Your daddy doesn't hate you, and you definitely didn't kill your mommy. Sometimes when people are very sad, they don't know how to show love." That same night, Ethan woke up screaming. His cries filled the mansion like emergency sirens. Sophia ran to his room and found him sitting in his bed, tears streaming down his cheeks, completely terrified. "Mommy, I want my mommy,"
he sobbed.
Without thinking twice, Sophia lifted him in her arms and rocked him gently. "Shh, my love, I'm here. Everything's okay. I had a scary dream." Ethan hiccuped against her shoulder. "Daddy was sending me away because I'm bad." "You're never bad, Ethan. You're perfect exactly as you are." Alexander appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, face full of panic. Seeing Sophia comforting his son, something changed in his expression. It was as if he saw for the first time what he had been missing all this time. "Nightmares again?" he asked softly. "He's been having nightmares for weeks," Sophia said, still rocking Ethan. "Didn't you know?" Alexander approached slowly, as if afraid of frightening his own son. "The nannies, they never told me anything." "Because the nannies go home at the end of the day," Sophia replied without reproach, but the implication was clear. Children need someone who's here at night too. It was the first time Alexander stayed up all night comforting Ethan, and when the child finally fell asleep between the two of them, father and son embraced for the first time in years, Sophia knew something fundamental had changed. But not everything was going to be easy. A week later, while Sophia was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the children, she heard raised voices in the main hall. "Are you completely insane, Alexander?" The voice was aristocratic, cutting like broken glass. A public school teacher. "Seriously?" Sophia peeked discreetly and saw an elegant woman in her 50s, dressed in a Chanel suit and pearls that probably cost more than Sophia's apartment. Beside her stood a distinguished man with silver hair and a disgusted expression. "Margaret, please," Alexander said, his voice tense. "It's none of your business." "None of my business." The woman, clearly Catherine's mother, stepped forward threateningly. "My grandchildren are being raised by some nobody from the projects. Catherine must be rolling over in her grave." "Enough," Alexander growled, but Margaret continued. "We've spoken with our lawyers, Alexander. We can petition for custody of the children, if we consider them to be in an inappropriate environment." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia felt her world wobble. She had known it was temporary, that eventually she would have to return to her previous life, but hearing the threat expressed so directly was like being slapped. "The children are well cared for," Alexander said finally, his voice dangerously low, "by a woman who throws herself in front of cars like a lunatic." Catherine's father spoke for the first time. What kind of example is that for the children? Sophia couldn't bear to listen anymore. She silently returned to the kitchen, her hands trembling as she finished preparing breakfast. When Catherine's parents left, Alexander found her there, standing by the window with her arms crossed over her chest. "You heard," he said. "It wasn't a question. Are they going to take the children away from you?" she asked, without turning around. "Not if I can help it." He approached from behind, his hands brushing her shoulders. "Sophia, what they said, they were right," she interrupted, finally turning to face him. "I'm just a public school teacher. I don't belong in this world. This world means nothing without you in it," Alexander said with an intensity that surprised her. But the seed of doubt had been planted. That same afternoon, at St. Patrick's Elementary, Sophia found herself sharing her concerns with her best friend and colleague, Maria Santos. "Are you crazy?" Maria exclaimed while they organized art supplies for the next day's class. "Do you know how many women would kill to be in your position?" "It's not about the money," Sophia murmured. "It's about the kids. Tyler is finally stable. Ethan is starting to trust. What if I hurt them more by leaving? What if I stay and hurt them when I inevitably mess everything up?" Maria stopped her work and studied her friend. "Or, what if this is exactly the family you've been waiting for your whole life, and you're too scared to admit it?" Before Sophia could respond, a small voice from the doorway interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Sophia?" They turned to see Tyler standing in the doorway, tears streaming down his cheeks. Behind him, Maria the housekeeper looked mortified. "I'm sorry, miss. He escaped from the car when we arrived. He insisted on coming to find you." Sophia knelt and opened her arms. Tyler ran to her, his small arms wrapping around her neck desperately. "They said you're going to leave," he sobbed. "The grandparents said you're not good for us." Sophia's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She looked over Tyler's head at Maria Santos, who nodded understandingly. "Do you want to leave?" Maria asked softly. "No," Sophia admitted, the word coming out like a sigh. "I don't want to leave." "Then stay," Tyler said, lifting his head to look at her with those enormous eyes.
Please stay with us.
And in that moment, Sophia realized it was no longer about what was best for the children, or what society thought, or even what class differences dictated. It was about love, pure, unconditional love, that had grown silently until it became the most powerful force in her life. That night, she waited until Alexander returned from the office. She found him in his study, surrounded by documents, a glass of whiskey, half empty next to his computer. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Alexander looked up, noticing for the first time the determination in her posture. "Has something happened with Tyler?" "With me," she corrected. "And with us." She approached his desk and placed both hands on the polished wood surface. "Alexander, I'm falling in love with you, with your children, with this broken family we're trying to repair together, and that terrifies me."
Chiz.
Alexander stood slowly, walking around the desk, until he was in front of her. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I already lost one family," she whispered. "Because I don't know if I'm strong enough to lose another." "What if you don't have to lose it?" he asked, raising a hand to caress her cheek. "What if this time you can stay? Your in-laws can go to hell." Alexander interrupted with a vehemence that surprised her. "This is my family, my children, my decision, and I choose you. Sophia, I choose you again and again." When he kissed her, it was as if all the broken pieces of their lives finally found their place. It wasn't the soft, tentative kiss from the hospital. It was urgent, desperate, full of months of repressed emotions and unspoken promises. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I don't know when it happened. I don't know how, but I love you." I love the way my children laugh when you're around. I love how you've brought life back to our house. I love you too, she replied, unable to believe these words were coming out of her mouth. I love your determination to be better. I love how you fight for your children. I love the family we've created together. But their newly discovered happiness was about to be tested in the cruelest way. It all started with a cough. Ethan developed what seemed like a common cold, but in 2 days it escalated to something much more serious. His small body burned with fever, his lungs struggled for every breath. Pneumonia, the doctor diagnosed at the hospital. We'll have to hospitalize him for several days. Alexander fell apart. All the progress he had made, all the healing he had achieved, seemed to evaporate as he watched his youngest son connected to monitors and oxygen tubes. It's my fault, he murmured,
She's
pacing back and forth in the waiting room like a caged animal. I should have noticed he was sick earlier.
She's
I should have. Stop, Sophia interrupted firmly. This isn't anyone's fault. Children get sick. What matters now is being here for him. For 3 days and 3 nights, Sophia didn't leave the hospital. Alexander tried to convince her to go home to rest, but she refused outright. They took turns holding Ethan's small hand, talking to him, while he slept, being there every time his eyes opened seeking comfort. On the second night, when Ethan woke up asking for water,
she's
Sophia noticed something that made her blood freeze. A small rash had appeared on the child's neck. Nurse, she shouted, pressing the emergency button. What followed was an avalanche of medical activity. Doctors running, urgent tests, complicated medical words that Sophia didn't understand, but that sounded terrifying. Meningitis, the chief doctor finally announced, his face grave. It's bacterial. We've started aggressive antibiotics, but the next 48 hours will be critical. Alexander collapsed into a chair, color draining completely from his face. Is he going to?
she's
Is he going to?
she's
It's too early to know, the doctor replied with brutal honesty, but he has factors in his favor. He's young, strong, and we caught the infection relatively early. It was during those endless 48 hours that Sophia saw Alexander face his deepest fears. The possibility of losing Ethan the same way he had lost Catherine tormented him every second. I can't go through this again, he confessed to her in the early hours of the second day, his voice broken with emotion. I can't lose another child. You're not going to lose him, Sophia said with a conviction she didn't know she possessed. This child is a fighter. Look at him. He's been fighting his whole life to earn your love, and he's not going to give up now. That's when Alexander did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He approached Ethan's bed, took his son's small hand, and spoke directly to him. Ethan,
she's
he whispered, tears streaming freely down his cheeks. Daddy's here. Daddy loves you so much, my brave little boy. Please stay with me. We have so many things to do together. Teach you to ride a bike, take you to the park, read bedtime stories. Please don't leave. As if he had been waiting for exactly those words, Ethan opened his eyes. His lips moved slightly, forming an almost inaudible word. Daddy, if this story is moving you as much as it's moving us, don't forget to hit like, so we know you want more stories like this. Ethan recovered gradually, and with his recovery came a complete transformation in the family dynamic. Alexander had completely restructured his life, delegating responsibilities at the company to be more present. Family dinners became sacred events where they shared stories from the day, made plans for the weekend, and strengthened bonds that had been broken for so long. Sophia had found a way to balance her responsibilities at school with her new role in this non-traditional family. The principal, initially skeptical about the special work arrangements, had been impressed by the dramatic improvement in Sophia's emotional well-being and her renewed enthusiasm for teaching. But it was an April afternoon, while watching Alexander teach Ethan to plant seeds in the garden, that Sophia realized how much they had all changed. Tyler was no longer the rebellious child who ran away from school. Now he helped his father with infinite patience, translating gardening instructions for his younger brother. Ethan had blossomed from an ethereal, sad child into a communicative little one who filled the house with laughter and endless questions. And Alexander had become the father he had always had the potential to be: patient, present, protective, but not overprotective. "Miss Sophia," Ethan said one afternoon, while she was helping him with a puzzle, "when are you going to officially be our mommy?" The question took her by surprise. Although they had been living as a family for months, they had never formally talked about the future. "Do you want me to officially be your mommy?" she asked gently. "Yes," Ethan replied without hesitation, "and Tyler wants it too. We asked Daddy, and he said he had to ask you first." That night, after putting the children to bed, Sophia found Alexander in the garden, where he had been working all day. He had created a small stone path leading to a bench under a flowering cherry tree. "The kids made me an interesting proposal today," she said, sitting beside him. Alexander laughed softly. "Oh yeah, let me guess, something about making you officially part of the family. Something like that." Sophia studied his profile in the golden light of sunset. "And what do you think about that proposal?" Instead of answering immediately, Alexander stood up and knelt in front of her. From his shirt pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box that made Sophia's heart stop completely. "I think," he said, opening the box to reveal a diamond ring that captured the sunset light like liquid fire. "It's the best idea they've ever had." "Alexander," she whispered, tears already beginning to flow down her cheeks. "Sophia Rivera," he continued, his voice trembling with emotion, "you jumped in front of a car to save my son. But what you didn't know was that you were also saving me. You saved our entire family. Will you marry me? Will you officially be the mother of my children and the partner of my life?" "Yes," she whispered, extending a trembling hand. 1,000 times yes. When Alexander slid the ring onto her finger, cheers from the house startled them. They turned to see Tyler and Ethan pressed against the living room window, applauding frantically. "I think someone was spying." Alexander laughed. "I think the whole family was in on the plan," Sophia replied, pulling him in for a kiss that tasted of fulfilled promises and bright futures. 3 months later, in an intimate ceremony in the same garden where they had gotten engaged, Sophia Rivera became Sophia Blackwell. There were no grand fanfares or endless guest lists, just true family. Maria Santos as maid of honor, the children as ring bearers, Maria the housekeeper crying happily in the front row, and some close friends who had witnessed this family's miraculous transformation. Catherine's parents didn't attend, but they sent a letter that Alexander read privately, and then filed without comment. Some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when you had already won the war for your family's love. During the garden reception, while watching her new children run among the guests distributing rose petals, Sophia reflected on the impossible journey that had brought her here. A year ago, she had been a lonely woman, living in fear of love, protecting her heart behind walls she had built to survive. Now she was a wife, mother, integral part of a family she had helped heal, and that in turn had healed her. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "About miracles," she replied, accepting the glass but keeping her eyes on the children. "About how sometimes the worst things that happen to us turn out to be the beginning of the best." "You mean jumping in front of my car?" "I mean finding you," she corrected, turning to look at him. "Finding this family, discovering that love doesn't always come the way we expect." Alexander wrapped her in his arms, swaying gently to the rhythm of music floating from the small band they had hired. "You know what I think," he murmured against her ear. "What?" "That Catherine would be happy," he said softly. "Not jealous, not upset, happy that her children finally have a mother who loves them unconditionally, and that I finally found my way back to being the man she wanted me to be." Tears ran silently down Sophia's cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness, but of happiness so deep she had no words to describe it. "I love you, Alexander Blackwell," she whispered. "And I love you, Sophia Blackwell," he replied, making the surname sound like a promise, As the night progressed and guests gradually said their goodbyes, the new Blackwell family found themselves alone in the garden illuminated by fairy lights. Tyler and Ethan had insisted on staying awake for the family part of the celebration, which consisted mainly of eating the rest of the wedding cake and making extravagant plans for their family honeymoon to Disney World. "Does this mean I have to call you Mom Sophia officially now?" Ethan asked, his face smeared with frosting. "You can call me whatever makes you feel most comfortable," Sophia replied, wiping his face with a napkin. "I want to call you Mom," Ethan declared solemnly, "because that's what you are." "What about you, Tyler?" Alexander asked his older son, who had been watching the exchange with a thoughtful expression. "I want to call her Mom too," Tyler finally said. "But, is it okay to have two moms, one in heaven and one here?" Sophia's heart expanded until she thought it might explode with love for this wise child who had grown up too fast, but still retained that precious innocence. "More than okay," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "Your first mom loved you enough to make sure you had someone else to take care of you when she couldn't be here." And as the Blackwell family finally headed toward the house, with the children running ahead, and Alexander and Sophia walking hand in hand under a starry sky, one thing was perfectly clear: true love doesn't always come the way we expect, but it always comes exactly when we need it most. Sometimes, Sophia reflected as she watched her children climb the stairs to their bedrooms, the most beautiful endings are born from the most frightening beginnings. And sometimes jumping in front of a car to save an unknown child ends up saving you too. If this story touched your heart as much as it touched ours, subscribe for more stories of love, hope, and families that form in the most unexpected ways. Because we all deserve to believe in happy endings, especially those that come disguised as new beginnings.